Her anger and her frustration as she spoke on the street last night to Steve Harrigan, who was covering all of that. Joining me now, Richard Fowler, radio show host, and Kevin Jackson, executive director of The Black Sphere, also a radio talk show host and author of Race Pimping, the multi-trillion-dollar business of liberalism. Gentlemen, I know you come at this from very different perspectives. There is something very wrong in our country when this happens in cities across the country before anybody has even seen a video or anybody really knows the evidence of the exact case and how it played out on the street. Richard, let me start with you because we need to figure out how to make this stop.
Absolutely, Martha. We have got, as a country, have to do some soul searching to figure out how we end what is bad relations between police departments and communities of color, both Hispanic and African American. That young lady's anger speaks to decades and decades of police departments and police department policies and practices that have led to the unjust killings of thousands of African Americans. This goes beyond just what's happening in the 2000s. Think about Rodney King. Think about Sean Bell, who was shot 42 times at his bachelor party by police departments. This is a real problem in this country that we have got to address, and it's not going to change overnight. Yeah. But we've got to understand that anger.
Total nonsense.
I figured that you would say that, Kevin. But you know, that woman. Let me just say one thing. That woman's feelings, they're real. But what bothers me is that we don't even know. You know, we heard from the police chief last night, right? But they're just jumping the gun and just saying, "See, here we go again." And we see time and time again that the evidence points in a different direction. Now, there are times when the police are wrong. Tulsa may be one of them, and that is the other situation that's brewing out there, Kevin.
Well, the fact of the matter is Richard has no more information than anybody else, and he's completely jumped to a conclusion. Last night he and I debated this, and he said, why can't we rush to judgment? Why do we have to wait for justice? This is nonsense. And what you said about this young lady, nothing she said rings true in this country. She hasn't experienced anything that she talked about, anything that she ranted about, the idea that she could be killed. She's seen more police officers in the last week than she's seen. I mean, they could have potentially killed her, but she asks as if she could get killed at the grocery store or whatever. Let me tell you where she could get killed the fastest. She could get killed the fastest in her own neighborhood by the very people that she claims that she's representing and that the Black Lives Matter movement represents. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
You know, you look at, Richard, you look at who was shot last night. One of the protesters shot by another protester, according to the reports that we've got. You know, I mean, you do have to be careful. And I heard an activist yesterday, he was on our air, you know, telling people in Charlotte, you need to boycott this city, right? So, great idea, right? You want to shut down the city where a lot of people work, a lot of people have jobs, and essentially that's what we saw last night. You know, they shut down this city. That is an area, Charlotte is a beautiful city. There's shops and restaurants all through that area, and those people aren't going to be able to go to work today. So who benefits from any of this? How does it get anyone anywhere, Richard?
Here's the thing, Martha. What we've seen when boycotting cities, we saw the Birmingham bus boycott, which is an example of boycotting a city to create real systemic change in this country. Here's the problem that Kevin has. Clearly, he lives in an alternate reality from the rest of African Americans who understand. Listen, when I was growing up, I was born in 1987, and I remember walking to school. I lived in a suburban neighborhood, and I remember my brother, when he got his first car, my mom bought for him, being stopped by the police multiple times. One officer even said to my brother, "Cars have been stolen in the neighborhood." And so we're checking to see if your cars have been stolen. We were the only black family living in that community, and now Kevin is going to delegitimize my first-person narrative of the problem that exists between African Americans and the police. No matter where they live, you could live in suburb. It happened to my brother, Kevin. How disrespectful are you going to be? You are the problem in this country. When Hillary Clinton says
you're the problem, Richard,
when Hillary Clinton says there's a basket of deplorables, you are a deplorable. You are the definition of deplorable to the African American community.
Richard,
you are.
Let me respond back to Richard, Martha.
And blood is on your hands for all those black men who died.
Richard, hold on. Calm down. You are entitled to your experience and your your say in the matter and your opinion. And so is Kevin. And there's no reason to insult him with that kind of name calling.
Martha, don't worry about Richard insulting me. Let me just respond. Richard doesn't understand that my father was in San Quentin prison. My mother died when I was 5, and I grew up in the hood. And his 1987 realization of nothing doesn't compare to my 1960s upbringing. So there you go, Richard. If you want to talk about who's growing up in a situation, I'm much older than you. I've seen a lot more than you. I have a lot more life experience. And you have not experienced a fraction of anything that you're talking about. All you want to do is overtalk me, but you're not going to get away with it this time. I'm not going to let you. The fact is, you haven't experienced any part of what you're talking about.
Kevin, you made your point. You feel that Richard has not experienced what you experienced.
Of course he hasn't. Richard hasn't been pulled over by police or harassed by police.
That.
Really? How did you survive, Richard? How did you survive it?
My brother was pulled over by the police. I haven't pulled over by the police.
Did he survive it? Is he alive?
But Kevin, let me finish. But Kevin, your story, your father's story, is part of the problem. We have a prison industrial complex where we saw in the late 70s, under Richard Nixon in the failed war on drugs, we put more black brothers, more black sons, more black fathers in jail than any other group of individuals for nothing. For nothing.
Okay, Richard, you know what, Richard?
Richard, Kevin.
You know what, Richard? Here's what. Let me say this, Martha. Here's the problem we have. This city has a 40%. They have a 40% higher crime rate than other cities in the country. 62 people died last year, so, more than in a reasonable time. 2/3 of those people that died were black, of a 35% black population. And Richard wants to blame the police. These people are being killed by our own people, and Richard ignores it because what's happened with the police? What's happened with the police leading up to this point?
Here's a question. So I have a question. Let me ask Richard a question. You know, why is it, Richard? You know, in this case, you have a black police officer and a black man in this case, and we don't know all the details. We know what the police chief told us. We know what the family says. The family's going to see the video today for themselves, and I think it's interesting that they are, bringing in the family. They want them to see exactly what happened, and they want them to see it today. And my guess is that they're hoping that that is going to go towards calming things down. But we need to stop jumping to conclusions and pointing fingers and assuming that people are guilty. And also, we need to understand that there is responsibility that lies within all of us, and that we need to figure out a way to get past this problem. But Richard, you can't not acknowledge what Kevin is saying in terms of, the victimization that is sometimes felt by some people in your community that maybe is not the whole picture.
You're right, Martha. It's not the whole picture. And I think what I said last night, and I'll reiterate that point, is that we have to wait, right? We have to wait for justice to take its course. We have to wait for the investigation to happen. Where was that waiting when this young gentleman was shot? Where was that waiting when Laquan McDonald was shot 16 times by the police? Did the police wait? Did the police investigate? No, they just shot him. Where were the police when they shot Sean Bell 42 times? There was no investigation. There was no waiting. There was no jury of his peers.
But one of the questions is why, and I understand your passion for this, I do, Richard, but why are you not coming on this show and shouting, but why are you not shouting about the people who have been killed in Chicago, about the intrinsic problems in the inner cities in this country that can be solved by people taking, in some cases, responsibility? So, and do you believe that police officers wake up in the morning and want to go kill somebody? Do you believe that, Richard?
No, not at all. No, not at all. I'll have to say two things on that. Number one, I do not believe the police want to wake up and kill everybody. But what I will say, and I said it last night, is there are patterns and practices of bias in police departments, whether the police officers are white, black, Hispanic, purple, blue, or yellow. Additionally, on this air, multiple times, I have talked about the problems in Chicago and the proliferation of illegal guns in the city of Chicago. The police chief in Chicago, excuse me, can I finish? The police chief in Chicago, as well as the incoming attorney general in the city of Chicago, has said over and over again, we need to start prosecuting straw purchasers. The reason why she can't do it is because of policies and practices. You got to get deeper than just the gun. You got to get to the person whose hand the gun is in. You can't kill without a gun.
Well, yeah.
Martha, Richard conveniently forgets.
Kevin, go ahead. You finish. You have some time.
Richard conveniently forgets that the president of the United States is black. The attorney general is black.
Here we go.
The Democrat that runs that city is there. The police chief is black. He wants to forget that. The other thing that Richard wants to forget.
Richard, be quiet. Let Kevin finish.
You know what? It has nothing to do with color for me, because you know what? There are white people who've been killed. There are Asian people who were killed. Richard can't name one of them because he's an ethnocentric racist who only focuses on black issues, and he doesn't care about the real statistics of it.
I'm a racist.
He's just going to come on here and toe the party line and the narrative of the left.
All right. So you
I'm
called
a
each
racist
other
and
names.
you're deplorable.
Yeah, exactly. So we got to do better than that. But I appreciate both of you bringing your thoughts
Thanks,
to the
Martha.
table, because it was heartbreaking what we saw last night, and I don't want to see it in any more cities across America. It's awful. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. We'll talk to you
Thank
again
you.
soon.
Motions are